So I'm wondering, why it seems like the assumption on the tier 1 incidents has been to minimize the calls. That was the thrust of everything that was said. When we talked about it originally, we talked about the fact that people like calling, right? And we talked about the path A, path B. We talked about there's one option, which is to push them away, try to push them away, and the other option is to say it's good for them to call, it's good for us to speak with them, it's good for us to make them happy, but we just don't want to do it for free anymore. We don't want to do the non-core stuff for free anymore, right? So remember we talked about, we don't necessarily want to stop helping them with the erroneous stuff, like my internet doesn't work and my hardware doesn't work, and things that don't have to do with us, but we just don't want to do it for free. So I'm wondering why you would choose to sort of the online help concept, right, is self-service, is to drive them away. But my concern would be that not only do we, by doing that, not only do we make it harder for them to get help quickly, but we also push away a revenue opportunity. So I'm wondering why you would choose to go in that direction versus monetizing that, versus keeping it and encouraging people to continue doing it, but just attaching a cost to it.
When we started entertaining different approaches to the tier 1 issues, we considered capping the number of calls and charging them per call. And then we started thinking about the dynamics in the company. When we pictured an employee just came off the street within the last couple of weeks. He's sitting there, he has a problem. He's not sure, is this a problem I can call about? Am I going to get billed for this problem? Am I not going to get billed? He knows his boss is in the other room somewhere. He doesn't want to speak to him and start checking this out. He's at the counter. We were concerned if we started either capping calls or charging for calls, it would create a lot of friction between the managers and these low-level employees. And that was something that we really didn't want to do. So we felt that we would happily answer the call when we receive it, and also just mention to them, by the way, for future reference, you can get this answer, on the phone. Call us again if you'd like to. Happy to speak to you. But you have it right there in front of you on the pamphlet. That was kind of why we felt it made more sense to minimize it than monetize it. We also ran some projections as far as the cost of losing customers, if there are conflicts, if they start getting annoyed and things like that. And it just seemed like the $73,000 that's being spent on these calls could, even if we were able to generate some dollars off of that, reduce that number and generate some money, a couple of lost customers would wipe out any of those profits and the cost. And that was kind of why we went this way.
And we went the pamphlet route because we did our research, and something that's easily available for them, something attractive that's right in front of their face, they're going to refer to it, as long as it's in front of them or in their possession. And also, even if they don't use it initially, they'll be able to call, and we will be able to refer them to the pamphlet, so they're able to look at it, which will also reduce future calls.
What did you use as sort of a business case that you compared us to when you were doing your research? What did you see that was similar to us?
So we looked at the different pieces. We kind of looked at a number of different directions. We looked at other consulting, or obviously we looked at the comps, RICS, companies like that.
Wait, I'm sorry.
They were doing RICS.
RICS?
Companies, yeah, who provided similar services, similar point-of-sale services.
Anybody outside the point-of-sale arena?
So we looked a little bit at some consulting firms, did some research on how they charge, what they're doing, how they offer their services. That was kind of how we developed the consulting aspect.
But as far as handling the support and
this challenge is very unique. It's not. You guys are offering something great. You guys are not having commitments through contracts. You guys have a 50% referral rate. That's your client base, and that's something that we kept in mind and really had to focus in on, which was something that was very different than most companies. You guys have a very unique product.
One company we did look at, one company that we did look at was with what Netflix did not too long ago, when they kind of wanted to separate their company and send the users to another company for the online streaming, and then obviously separate the DVD business. And so we saw that they lost a ton of customers and it really killed their stock. was like one thing we kind of compared to this scenario.
And to go off of that, something where you have a free service being provided to you, and ending up charging for that. We also looked at Bank of America, where they were going to charge a $5 debit card usage every month, and that immediately we did our research, we looked into it, and that was they lost a lot of customers for that, and they projected, they sent an email. So like, this is what we're going to do, and they heard complaints. They were like, this is not going to happen, and then they brought it back, they retracted it.
But we talked about, again, not to badger the witnesses, but just for the sake of to spice up the discussion.
Right.
We talked about that when we talked on Sunday, that we have to counter that argument, I would say we have to think about all the variables, like in different situations. In the case of when banks add charges, the problem is customers, first of all, they have a million places to go, right? The barriers to moving are very low. So you can go from across the street to Chase and get the same thing as the perception of the customer. The other thing is with debit card, anytime they add charges to things like debit cards or writing a check or something like that, the customer doesn't understand what they're getting for it, what additional they're getting for it, right? In our case, what we talked about is we have a different situation because we have very hard to switch, right? I told you the retention rates over years, very hard to switch away from us. So we have a captive audience, which gives us leverage. And the other thing is that in terms of the perception of value, when someone one of the non-core incidents I gave you an example of is my internet's not working. And I told you it's a very common reason why people call us even though it's not a service we provide them, which we don't want to pay. I said we're happy to take the call, but we would like to get paid now to do what Verizon should be doing for them or what Sprint should be doing for them, right? I see that as a different situation than charging someone $1 to use a debit card, because in the debit card case, they don't understand what did I get for my dollar. In the case of the internet, where I don't necessarily, I guess based on the benefit of seeing this every day, where I don't know if I can imagine them using the online manual, is that when they're standing at the register, and we talked about this on Sunday, when they're standing at the register, and all of a sudden they can't ring up a customer, right? Just imagine the pressure, because this is kind of one of the ways that we make decisions in business, is we have to walk a mile in the shoes of the people we're dealing with, right? Emotionally. How do they react? So they're standing at the register, and all of a sudden there's two people waiting to pay, and they can't pay. They can't charge them. I would say to you, if they have a choice, they're sweating, right? They're starting to get really uncomfortable because the customers are looking at them and getting angry with them. So they have choice A and choice B. Choice A is use the online manual and try to figure out why the internet's not working. Choice B is call 1-888-7 something, RunIt. And you'll get through to somebody based on prior experience, get through to somebody in 10 seconds, and they'll help you with your internet. Which one are you going to do
Well, that's
when you've got people staring at you across the way? That's part of the problem.
One of the ways we look at it is using it as a template is, we introduce this beforehand, and they look at it in the beginning, if they're new at least. They'll be able to read through it because it's not many questions, it's basic questions where they can look at, and they can familiarize themselves with it. And the first question over there is, my internet service doesn't work, so how do I fix it? If they read this before, and then they have this problem in the near future, they'll automatically would refer to this. Oh, they would know the answer that this is not something that you offer. They would call.
The conveniency of this pamphlet is, option C in this situation, which they can definitely familiarize them with before even getting to the point of being uncomfortable and having to decide which one I'm going to do.
And another reason for the pamphlet is he thought it would be kind of disconcerting if clients would call up RunIt for a simple solution, and they said, or a simple answer, and you said, we'll tell you, but it's $5.99. He thought that the tier 1 service was essential to the retention rate in your business, and we really wanted to use the path of least resistance to try to steer
the things we looked at was new customers. You mentioned that 50% of your business is referral based, and we projected some numbers. If, let's say you lost 10% of those referrals, at 120 customers a year, 60 of those are referral based. That's 6 customers a year. You mentioned basically the smallest customers, 2 stations, 3 stores, $129 an hour. It's about $9,000 a year. $129 per month, $9,000 a year. And you mentioned your retention rate is basically 99% over a 5-year life cycle. So that's $15,000 in those 5 years, and very often they keep going. So we felt like the value of losing, even if it was just 6 customers, that's in referrals, that's $90,000 right there.
Right.
And that's if none of them, all of them with smallest size. So largest customers with 100 stores, something like that, it's about a $600,000 lifetime value, was what the numbers we came up with. Losing 1 or 2 of those would make the $73,000 a year basically forgotten. So we felt that if this works, if it produces the calls, great. If it doesn't, it's a very small expenditure. The pamphlets are very cheap to make. They're not hard to write up because instead of going to the IT department, we're running queries from the questions you already got. We're not really answering the really difficult questions, the complicated things that you need the experts for. Really just generating them from the common questions that you have in your queries. So it would be simple and cheap to make. We weren't sure it would work and really eliminate, minimize the amounts. We felt it was certainly worth a shot, and we felt that this way the customers, they can pull every time they want. They have this as another option if they want to use it. In worst case scenario, nobody gets upset.
And once they're on the tech support, they'll be able to refer them to the pamphlet. Our main reasoning for this pamphlet was because we were very sensitive to the referral rate and to the actual clients. We really try to stay away from upsetting the clients whatsoever.
Right. So just to make sure we understand it correctly, you're saying, you've said a few times, Jeffrey, about losing customers, right? So I'd be interested in understanding, so why did we lose the customers?
Well, we're concerned that if someone...
No, I mean, walk me through the practical, if you assign a percentage to it like that, 10%, let's say, there must be some thinking behind what precipitated the loss, like what caused it to happen. So what happened? They called, they were told they had to pay for something that made them angry enough to want to put themselves through the pain. They were told they had to pay for something that we don't even provide, right? That we were willing to do for them. And that angered them enough to want to put themselves through the pain of switching their entire business over to another system. Is that what?
And the 10% that I was talking about was referral rates. If they're feeling like they're having this conflict in their office, they might feel like it's not worth switching. It's just too expensive, it's too time, it's too much work. But they don't turn to their friend and say, guys, you gotta have this system, because before they were just feeling great about it. Now they're feeling like we have some conflict in the office. Our employees, some of them are costing us a lot of money. They keep calling. We have to fire a guy because he made 30 phone calls last week. Just wasn't worth having it. And this is the way the company's running it now. So we felt like they might, it's not that they're necessarily going to move, it's maybe too expensive, too much of a hassle, but they may not go to their friends and say, guys, we have this awesome company, we've been using them for years, everything is a breeze with them. They're easy to deal with, it's a cheap price, it's simple, and that was our concern. So we were concerned, the number there, the 10%, was just a reduction in referral.
Why does the price for the, one thing that I find very interesting about this, your approach, is that when I presented it to you, I said to you, as nowadays in the economy, and whenever you go into stores, there's a huge focus on cheap. I find a lot of people, when I'm being helped, often default to showing me the cheapest option, assuming that's what I want. I want to save money, but that's not what I'm thinking. Oftentimes people solve the wrong problem. Sometimes I want the best. I don't want the cheapest. In this case, when I presented it to you, I actually said to you, we don't care about what it costs right now. Like, we're not worried about the cost because we've got the cost under control. That's not our problem. Like, we're not trying to save money, right? That wasn't our problem. We're trying to make more money, right? Different issue, right? As I said to you, the support doesn't cost, we've managed to get that cost to a good place for what we do. And we think it's a good cost. So when, we'll save some of that. It's not going to make that much difference to our bottom line. But if we're adding so much value, if we could generate revenue from it, meaningful revenue, that would be, interesting. And so what I'm thinking as the, sitting on top of the company right now, listening to this in terms of after all the effort of making this, right, I feel like when we're talking about minimizing tier 1, we'll maybe save a few dollars, but we're not going to make any more money. Do you see what I'm saying? In other words, we're solving the cost issue, but the cost issue wasn't the issue. One thing I'm wondering is, it almost seems like there's been the presumption that it wouldn't work because you talked about this idea of, we don't want to create this conflict where every time someone calls they get dinged, right? Are there other ways of doing it? Is that the only way to price it? So does it have to be an a la carte, ding, 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 I call, I get charged, I call, I get charged? Or could there be something else that is, could there be packages that make it less ding oriented? Where people buy in at certain levels of support that entitle them to, a certain volume of calls. Does it have to be? Sometimes that's a way of softening a blow in pricing, right? Instead of, think of sell plans. None of us like to be dinged every time we do something, right? It reminds us of what we're paying for something. But if we pay for a bunch of something, and as long as we stay within that range, we don't see it again. We can usually handle that. Did you consider that, as a way of perhaps slipping this through, but making it less difficult to swallow, sort of not making it? Steve, do you follow in?
Yeah. Let me just add something to the frame for a second. One of the issue that we're really kind of talking about is that in many cases, what the client is asking us to do is step in as their operations department, where they have none. And so what happens is that we handle a lot of the consulting that has to do with business operations, hardware operations, software operations. In some cases, there are technical applications of handling their credit card processing or handling their internet access and things like that. And so there's this whole area here that we're not really taking advantage of, that we can make money on.
Within tier 1? These are tier 1?
No, these are actually above tier 1. And like Daniel was saying, tier 1 it's an issue, but it's not that type of issue.
Although tier 1, there are about 300 incidents a month in tier 1 that are non-core, like my internet and my things that we don't consider to be our business, but that are solved reasonably quickly, but they're very critical when they're happening. That was my point. Like they're not necessarily that complicated, but they call us because they know we'll help, and it's not really the service that we offer, but we do it anyway.
Okay.
That was another. I gave them two problems. One was those, and one was the ones that go around our support to our senior people, the tier 3 ones.
And so the first one, they kind of framed it with that pamphlet, right? So
I'm just arguing about whether I can imagine. I'm afraid people are just going to say that's very nice, but I'm going to call you anyway, and then we're back to square one in terms of, because that's what we see them doing.
And their approach is kind of like, well, okay, so this is kind of like reading the emergency procedures on a plane, that you'll probably never really use it, right? But there are those people who actually read it ahead of time on maybe 3 flights before that, and they might remember something from that, and they decide that instead of panicking, they know how to use the emergency door. Is that where you guys were going with that?
We see more value. I mean, for people who are coming in, the employers can tell their employees that this is something that will answer all their questions beforehand. I feel like comparing it to the emergency is kind of putting this, at a lower level, in the sense that we see that there's a lot more value with the actual pamphlet.
Well, the managers need to talk with their employees as well as shoulder. Like, for example, I was just ordering the new iPhone 5, and I went online and my contract is expiring soon, and I went online and I saw that I can upgrade it. However, there is a $30 mandatory fee that they're charging me for, and I don't want to pay it because in the past I've been with Verizon for a very long time, and so have my parents and everyone. That $30 fee was always waived for us, and all of a sudden it's mandatory, and I have to pay it. I've never paid it in the past, and now I'm switching from Verizon to Sprint. And we don't want the same things that happen to you guys, because you've been loyal to your customers, your customers been loyal to you. The pamphlet is very simple, emergency procedures is a very long, there's a lot of papers.
Yeah, but these are two different things that you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's hard to compare it, I know.
Right. That
No,
happens
but
in our-
it's essential, but the point is it's essential. I'll give you another way of looking at it, because first of all, barriers are very important to consider, right? In cell business, there are no barriers. You can move around so easily, and other people are offering you a special to convert and move over to them, and also in our business, the pain of switching, it's like having heart surgery. That's not how switching a cell phone feels. You can port your number over, even, right? This is the analogy I would give you. If you're bleeding, if you're lying in the street bleeding, right, and someone threw a manual at you, you got a choice. You can go to the emergency room, or you can read a book. Which one would you do? That's what we deal with. That's the behavior we're dealing with. Is the reflex, and it's all because when you're standing, you got to remember the emotion I told you. When you're standing at the register, which is where most of the action happens in our business, is at the register with customers. You're standing at the register, and people are waiting to leave, and you're afraid they're going to put their shirt down and leave and not buy it. If you don't get it sold right now, you're like, I don't have time for manuals. I just want someone to save me. That's what we're grappling with.
We actually did consider other pricing models. First, we considered just an unlimited certain fee and its unlimited calling. But we basically looked at it and said that's the same as you just raising your price. So if you want to raise the price for your service, ultimately that's what you're doing. You're saying we're taking one part of our service, assigning a price to it. Everyone's getting the same thing. We're just going to increase that price. And we felt that that wasn't a decision that we could make. That was something that if you decide to raise your price, is up to you. And then when it came to a certain number of calls, we felt like we were back to the same problem as before, which is someone calls 5 times, or he's not sure. The guy next to him called twice, and he doesn't know if I can call now. He doesn't know, am I going to go beyond that number, and then what happens? So we felt that staggering the numbers, capping the numbers, might also lead to problems. And ultimately, we felt because as you mentioned, the costs were under control, if we could find some way to make it a little bit easier, a little bit better at a low cost, which is what we felt this was, great. And if not, it's not. So we felt that the real issue was in tier 3, and we felt that that was where we could monetize it and really make some money.
Okay, we're agreeing with that.
No, I mean I mean, you've thought through the position.
So what happens when a client all of a sudden wasn't paying, now is being asked to pay? So what happens if they refuse, or they decide that they're unhappy about that? Well, how would you handle that?
Consulting?
Well, we implemented the grandfathering. So whatever the service they've been provided, if they were receiving financial reports, they'll still get the financial reports, but only the financial reports. If they want anything else, then we have a charge for that. We're keeping our clients, happy with continuing to provide the services that they've already been providing.
Okay.
So, like, one of our goals as a consultant is, I know you're very focused on how can we create a revenue from this. And so our goal is kind of to use that consultant almost to like open a new branch of business that could start out with just reports, but could lead to many other things. It could lead to a full-blown tech support business. It could, in terms of like fixing internet, fixing computers, fixing all the problems that they may have, and those things can branch out. But we want to start it out with that way. And so I know you had mentioned that some of your clients, call on a monthly basis and ask for a report, and it may take an hour or two, to put together. And although they can do other stuff, meanwhile, what we don't want to do is take away that service from that person and say, oh, well, now you got to start paying us for it. And so rather than do that, we're going to grandfather them in, let them keep getting that for free, but now take advantage because apparently they're seeing a benefit of those reports. And I don't know everything about your business, and so I don't know if the other people are aware of the benefits that those reports could be for their business. And so our consultant feature now is, enabling other businesses to generate reports at a nominal fee, and that can become a revenue generator.
And to follow up with that, we also mentioned the importance of selling it. There has to be a campaign where we email, call, even personally call them to and let them know that these services are available and are there to benefit your company significantly and exponentially.
So when you guys were discussing alternatives to this, what were some of the alternatives that were batted around between you guys?
Well, we had a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. I'm curious.
We were running simplest in circles. We thought about bundling packages. We thought about, giving them a certain number of calls, paying per call, almost like a la carte. And so we thought of all the different ways that this would work. Now with a tier 1 call, I know you mentioned it's costing $17. We tried seeing, okay, if this person calls 5 or 10 times a month, and we're going to charge them per call, and we want to cover that cost, it's going to cost a minimum of $17 for every phone call that this employee picks up the phone and makes a call. So even if he's under stress and this and that, and he has to pick up the phone and he has to spend $20 on every call, some managers may not be happy with that.
Right, but this is a business. This isn't a non-profit.
No,
I told you, we have a problem. What we have is, see, one thing that I maybe didn't impress upon you enough, so maybe I could have told you this, is that we have, I would say, significantly improved the capacity of our support in the last 2 years. So I think we've made it even easier by adding more capacity and doing things differently. I told you we outsourced some of it. So what we've done is it's private label. It's still done under our name, and they would never know the difference. But by doing what we've done, we have made it easier than ever to get somebody on the phone within a few seconds. And what that does is it drives a certain behavior. Where I told you on Sunday, we have clients. Imagine this. So what you just said is important, because imagine you're shelling that $17 out of your pocket, right, every time.
Sure. You're
feeling for the client. Well, we're feeling for ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of we have clients who we know say to their employees, don't come to me if you have a question. Just call this number. They don't even tell them. They don't talk about cost, because there isn't any cost, right? So they basically say, we know they're a client. We've heard from people who work for the clients that they tell their people, just call as much as you want. You have any question? And we know who they're. It's very common. And because we've made it better, the support, we've actually sort of been punished by it. We've made it better, and so they call even more. Because in the old days, it wasn't so easy to get through to people. So I think they would maybe solve things on their own more. But now by improving things, we've actually dramatically increased the number of calls. So now I came to you with the idea of, okay, now this is good. We have all of them coming to us and asking us to help them. Maybe we can somehow gradually start to actually, but this goes back to the whole point about if you had a manual or you had a phone number, which one would you use? What we've seen is that the behavior is very predictable, in that people would rather just have someone do something for them than do it for themselves. So especially if we can do it quicker than trying to find the answer somewhere else. So if that's where this. I want to ask you something. Did you think about something I sense the reticence about this price change. I appreciate what you're saying about, don't mess with success, right? Don't alienate people, don't upset people, which is, we talked about on Sunday, is a very big concern. But one thing I did say to you, which I'm wondering if you considered, is I said to you, we take a very long view on this. We've been in business for many, many years. We don't plan to go anywhere. We have a lot of clients. Everything is great. And so we're not in a hurry, which is another thing that's unusual in business nowadays. Most people are looking to do something to make a splash quickly, right? We're not looking to do that. We're looking to make meaningful change over a long period of time. So one thing I said on Sunday was, maybe consider a 3-year plan. Did you consider it? In other words, doing something in, saying next month we're going to start charging you clearly would be a problem. But what if we said a year from now, we are going to, and what if we said for the next year, we're going to change the way your invoices look. We're going to put phantom charges that you don't have to pay, but we're going to just put them there so that you can begin to get used to what we consider included and what we consider excluded. So that there's all this time to kind of, you're eased in and you're not just slammed. Is that something that you, and again, we've got the time, given this is all we're looking to add, we're not looking to save, which is always a nice place to be. We're not saying we're going to go out of business if we don't save money right now, right? So we're saying that we'd like to add over time, so that 5 years from now we're not in the same position. Did you think about that?
Yeah, we did. What we considered in the beginning, one of our methods was what we wanted to do is psychologically let somebody know. For example, if they called and they said, "Oh, I have a problem with internet," or whatever problem they had, say, "Yeah, we'll help you out, but we just want to let you know that within 6 months from now, we'll be offering a new package, which we help you out 3-4 times a month, and the other, the other 5-6 times or however we'll be charging you for it." As you mentioned, I remember speaking to you earlier. You said that you're a very personal type of guy. You like talking to people directly instead of having some kind of technology to let everybody know. Just when you tell them on the phone, it's like a direct contact, and on top of that, they'll be prepared for a 6-month change or a year change or however you want to bundle up to a package.
And we were going to take that sample set of people, whoever we would do that, or send an email saying in 6 months this is what's going to happen, and try to get a feel for the reaction before actually implementing it. That was definitely one of the considerations.
But you decided against it.
When we started running the numbers of loss referrals, we felt that it just really wasn't worth the potential loss. Maybe that we underestimate the amount of work it is to generate these reports, but that was the rationale for that.
Well, you mean the tier 1? We're talking about the tier 1 stuff.
We wanted to keep it safe, but at the same time try to monetize what we can,
right,
and minimize what we can't. I guess we couldn't monetize that as well. We decided to go this way just to help you play it safe, and just the time to understand how the business works.
One other note on the tier 1 questions, we looked at some other sites to see some other companies, and we didn't get the impression they were charging or that you would want to charge for calls that are within the court, which would mean that the people making the call now have to figure out while they're standing at the register, sweating with the guy standing there, is this an issue that's going to cost me? Is this an issue that's within the court, or is it an issue outside the court? And we didn't feel that these untrained employees who've been there for 2 weeks would be able to make that decision. And we felt that therefore it might not be worth trying to monetize.
We were also thinking about making some kind of instructional videos about how do we connect the customers to the internet, or just something in terms of that line.
Right, that's where I was wondering where you guys might be going. Whether we would have a tier of webinars which was sales focused, selling the other services that we might be doing, so far as selling equipment or selling e-commerce connectivity, and then sort of using those webinars as training, but also as a sales way of doing it, and bringing in revenue from there. I was just wondering whether that was one of the alternatives that you guys were battering around.
And we had a lot. We just took about 2 days just to really put together a great, fantastic plan, to make you happy. And because I know you've been battling this situation for quite a time now. I figured we wanted to put the best plan for you, not to be upset, but at the same time to understand that we really want to make your company more profitable than it already is.
And the videos, we assume that it's going to be costly, and essentially they're kind of the same thing, where it's, am I going to watch a video right now when I need to figure out the situation right now?
Well, that's different. That's tier 1. We were talking about tier 3.
But yes, for tier 3.
It's something that definitely got to cross our minds.
I think we may have underestimated the value of the video as far as the potential to market, and that's why when we kind of considered the numbers, we were looking at it just cost versus benefit, and not considering those elements.
You know what's one thing that was just thinking is interesting in this discussion also, in terms of their perspective, is, or the difference in our perspectives, is that not only are we living with this every day, but you know, when we look at I think one of the fascinating things, Alex, about the example you gave, the cell phone example, is that the example you gave is a consumer example, and we sell business to business, and there are big differences between the two. So, for example, I think one of the reasons that we are, you know, pushing this point so hard, but it's not necessarily resonating, is I think it's also possible that your analysis has been, I would say, weighted through a consumer lens, not through a business lens. For example, we buy hosted software ourselves from other companies. So we are a customer of people who provide software the way we do. We buy NetSuite, which is a software that runs your business. We use that to run our business, and it's a hosted software. When you buy NetSuite, you can, depending on what you pay for, you might have a package where you can only email questions to them. You can't even call them. You have to pay more if you want to pick up the phone and actually have someone answer the phone. If you want certain things done for you, you have to pay consulting fees. We have another software that we just bought a few weeks ago called, what's it called? EchoSign. We just bought this software that enables us to get contracts signed electronically, and then come right into our system automatically. I spoke to the salesperson after our other person spoke to them and tried to get the price down. I spoke to them, and I ended up managing to get the price reduced, but the way I got it reduced is that they took the hand-holding off the table. So they have a package that includes a consultative implementation, and then somebody who's like your concierge that you can call to make sure that, but the way that the quid pro quo was that the way that they got the price down was that they took the hand-holding off the table. So the point is that what we see in business-facing solutions, which is very different to the consumer world, is we see, you know, you want service, you're going to pay for it. You know, you don't want to pay for it, you can get on a chat session where one person's helping 5 people, and they'll chat with you and they'll chat with 4 other people, and you'll wait for 5 minutes for them to answer your question. You know, so it's just again an observation.
But let me ask you a question for NetSuite. That when you
NetSuite's consumer.
Okay. But when you buying software, did you know that?
I'm sorry, I thought you said Netflix. Sorry.
No.
Right, NetSuite. Right, that's business.
When you bought the software, did they tell you? Did you know in the very beginning that they will be charging you for what was it?
Right, for different levels of support.
Yeah, for different levels of support. I mean, you said you can only email them. You can't call them.
Well, it depends on what you choose.
Yeah. Well, but you knew that in the very beginning. This is how they ran their business in the very beginning. One thing that we felt, you were offering free technical support. You already had that as, you know, it was implemented in people's minds. So this is how I want to do this. This is how they run their business. So I can call them 24/7 and just get support anytime I can. But then later on, you know, to start charging for the service, whether you're looking at it from a business or from a consumer perspective, it's like, okay, now, you know, I have to pay more money out of my pocket. Do I really want to do that or not? Maybe I'll switch, but at the same time, it's hard to switch. So I feel like it puts some kind of pressure on you and them. This is not something that we want to go through. So that's why it was very hard for us to choose our ways to see what was the best option that we can actually give you.
So what's interesting about what you just said is there's definitely a challenge with what we call legacy customers, right? With ones we already have. But then the business isn't status quo. So we're signing up new. I think we're going to ultimately sign up 15 new clients just this month. Is what it's looking like right now.
This is something that we consider.
So you're, you know, in other words, if you're steering a ship, so it almost sounds like what you're saying is, you know, the course you've been on for the last 10 years has always been a good course, but now there's an iceberg, but stay the course.
Well,
You know.
or you can say, if I tell everyone that I'm going to Miami, and then last minute I go to Cancun, maybe they won't be happy, and everyone was thinking
Right.
about going.
Right.
So
But what if the new clients? But what if you tell the new ones, right? There's the legacy ones. What about? But the question is, so forever we're going to be imprisoned by this practice.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying, but that's what we decided to use the grandfather option. See, the legacy customers will stay with. The new customers get on the ship and you tell them, okay, now we're going this
Right.
way, then they'll be happy with it and they'll go along.
Right, and it's so you do. I mean, you've come back and said, charge for the high value stuff,
Yes.
but don't charge for the stuff that people think you should do anyway, even though you don't think you should do it. Just don't charge for it because you'll piss them off.
Another thing we really took into consideration is that you said, all your clients are in constant communication with each other, so that
Yeah.
if
Well, many pockets, right?
that
Right.
pretty
The
close.
networked aspect of it.
Sure. So instead, we didn't want to change it so drastically that your old clients would be taking a steal, while your new clients would be having to getting charged a ridiculous amount. So we really took that into consideration as well to try to kind of walk the tightrope of what's the best path.
Meaning that if you're charging, let's say, $129 per base per month, the big businesses have no problem paying that, and all of a sudden, let's say you decide to charge $229, or let's say $329 by 200. Again, the big businesses have no problem doing that, maybe, but the small business might say, wow, that's a little too much. I don't have that much money to start paying for services. I'll just charge this amount. So we took a lot of things into consideration. We really tried to think it through.
Would you be considering charging for every call at the tier 1 level?
No, I never put that on the table with you. I said we have a core commitment to. The issue is not ever. We're philosophically committed to supporting our product, right? That's not the issue. The issue is that we have been turned into, as Steve said, we specialize in people with 3 to 50 stores. That's our market. Especially I would say within the 3 to 20 store group, they don't have IT departments. So what they do is they turn us into their IT department, and they push us beyond what we ever intended. We're supposed to be their point of sale system. They turn us into their router people and their internet people and their, fix my old hardware that I didn't even buy from you people, and just answer every question I can ever think of about IT.
We've replaced people in their organizations. So
Because we're free.
they've taken out literally a level in the hierarchy where we've actually now taken that place. Unintentionally, but definitely happened. And so now, instead of calling this particular individual who would then diagnose and triage an issue, they've had us doing that issue.
Correct. This is one of the reasons that we mentioned, as Ben said earlier, we have the consultant. Maybe this could lead to, I'm not saying that you want to open up another business, but within your business, in a way where you can start charging, on whatever you want to charge for, for a business, for a consultant fee, such as technical support or whatever to your problems that arise.
So to add on to that, so for instance, we can make mention, hey, if you're calling in, like, hey, here's our core commitment, let everybody know our core commitment, here's what we're going to solve for you. So we'll solve the other stuff too, but it's going to cost you. Because, with our new consult segment of our business, we now help solve hardware issues, technical issues with your internet, your printer stopped working, whatever the case may be, anything computer peripheral associations, we can now start charging through our consultant section. So it's not going to necessarily alienate them, and it might even take those being outside of tier 1 calls, and now just kind of like move them around into a different segment of the business without them even knowing those are the same people.
Definitely, I can tell that you've thought about it a lot. I think that it's definitely difficult when you have so little time and don't have the benefit of living inside a business. There's only so much you can internalize the nuances of the. So I wouldn't want you to confuse the badgering a lack of appreciation for.
Of course not. We appreciate everything.
No, you guys did a great job with the information you had and the amount of time you had. That I think that you very sensitive to the goodwill of our company, right? I could feel it, you know. That
Steve, we appreciate you coming as well. We didn't know it was last minute, so we figured we want to put together the best plan we can.
you did. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, give it up for the new RunIt employees. Okay, thank you guys so much. Thank you to our three esteemed judges for the evening, the RunIt panel, and it's a good beginning to the challenges. Hopefully, from this evening, you guys got a sense of the distinction from Saturday night to today. It's a very different type of environment, and that's why I really wanted everybody to see it tonight. You know, you make a presentation, and on Saturday night, you basically got 1 or 2 questions. You kind of can move your way through those questions as quickly as possible and just move on. Here, the majority of the conversation is really delving into understanding, okay, that was a nice presentation, now let's really jump into it. And it's going to come out in terms of the quality of research and thought process that you put into it. That's really a lot of what you're going to be judged on. So good luck for tomorrow, guys, and let's get to work.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you guys. Good job, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.